Hello and welcome to lecture number 14. We're going to be discussing the foreign exchange market. This comes from chapter 17 of your book. Just by way of introduction, I've lived about 5 years abroad, mostly in the UK. The first time I went to the UK, I took out a student loan to get my master's degree in Edinburgh, Scotland. And so I borrowed in US dollars, but I had to pay for my tuition and for my living costs in British pounds. And so I had to exchange US currency for British currency. And the rate at which I exchanged changed while I was there, making it gradually more and more expensive as the dollar weakened against the British pound, meaning I was only able to get less or fewer and fewer British pounds for every dollar that I had. So chapter 14, we're going to be discussing a little bit about this market for the exchange of currency between nations. So first, a little bit about the basics of currency trading. Foreign exchange is the act of trading different nations' monies. Like I mentioned about transferring or exchanging US dollars for British pound. An exchange rate is the price of one nation's money in terms of another nation's money. And so right now it might be somewhere around $1.30 per British pound. So it would cost $1.30 to buy 1 British pound. So the exchange rate, if we looked at it in terms of British pound, it'd be $1.30 per British pound. Now, there are two different types of exchange rates that you'll usually hear quoted. One is the spot exchange rate. The spot exchange rate is the price for an immediate exchange. So today, right now, what is the price? That's the spot exchange rate. On the other hand, sometimes we need to know what is a price that we're expecting at some future date. We would call this a forward exchange rate, and it's the price set now for an exchange rate that will take place sometime in the future. So it's our best estimate, or the market's best estimate, of what the exchange rate will be at some pre-specified time in the future. So here, and this you can find in your book as well, this is the exchange rate quotations dated May 30th, 2014. You can see we've got the country and their currency, the country in bold, the currency name in not in bold, and then the price of that currency in US dollars, or the number of US dollars it would take to buy 1 unit of their currency. And here is the number of their currency it would take to buy 1 US dollar. So let's just take Argentina, the Argentina peso, for instance. So it would cost 12.38 cents in US dollars in order to buy 1 Argentina peso, or Argentine peso. We can look at it another way. It would cost 8.0784 pesos to purchase 1 US dollar. So these are spot rates. Okay, but down here you can see, here is the spot rate for the Australian dollar. So it would cost 93.11 US dollars, or cents, sorry, US cents, to purchase 1 Australian dollar. On the other hand, it would cost 1.0740 Australian dollars in order to buy 1 US dollar. And we can see right below that there's a 1-month forward rate, a 3-month forward rate, and a 6-month forward rate. You can see what the market is expecting. They're expecting here that the Australian dollar is going to weaken against the US dollar. So it'll cost us less US dollars over time, or at least this is the expectation, that it'll cost us less US dollars in the future to buy 1 Australian dollar. And so the US dollar becomes more and more expensive as it strengthens against the Australian dollar. So these are the common way in which you would see an exchange rate quotation, and you can view it in terms of the US dollar or in terms of the other currency. So what are some of the basics of currency trading? Well, the trading done with customers is called the retail part of the market. So it's mostly non-financial companies, financial institutions, and other organizations that undertake large trades as the customers of the banks that actively deal in the market. So when I participated in transferring funds from the US to the UK or from the UK back to the US, I was part of this market in exchange. However, the trading done between the banks, so just between the banks actively dealing in the foreign exchange market, is called the interbank part of the market. So while there are institutions participating in the retail part of the market, that's not their main purpose or business, whereas there are banks where they are actively dealing in this market, and those are called interbank transactions, or the interbank part of the market. Most foreign exchange trading involves the exchange of US dollars for another currency. And you see this as you go to other parts of the world. It is quite possible that you can even pay for things in US dollars, because it is the reserve currency for the world. The dollar is called a vehicle currency. Even if the goal is to exchange between two other currencies, one currency is commonly exchanged for dollars, and the dollars are then exchanged for the other currency. So how do we use the foreign exchange market? Well, in the customer or retail part of the spot foreign exchange market, individuals, businesses, and other organizations can acquire foreign monies to make payments, or they can sell foreign monies they have received in payments. The spot foreign exchange market provides clearing services that permit payments to flow between individuals, businesses, and other organizations that prefer to use different monies. One common way, and probably it'd be worth mentioning here, usually the most advantageous or cost-effective way of exchanging your money or getting the best exchange rate possible when purchasing goods overseas is to use your credit card. The credit card companies like Visa will do huge amounts of transactions every day across the world. And so they're constantly exchanging funds, and as a result, they do it in a very cost-effective way. So rather than pull money out of a bank at a specific exchange rate, which you'll lose more by doing it that way, if you can just pay with your credit card, Visa and their partners will get a better exchange rate than you can get individually. So what about the interbank foreign exchange trade? Participation in the interbank or interdealer part of the market provides a bank with a continuous stream of information on conditions in the foreign exchange market through communications with traders at other banks and through observing quoted prices. So this allows a bank to readjust its own position quickly and at a low cost. And it permits a bank to take on a position in a foreign currency quickly if the bank and its traders want to speculate on exchange rate movements in the near future. So these are people who are constantly dealing daily. This is their business to deal in the foreign exchange market. So about half of interbank trading occurs through brokers. Most use electronic brokering systems. Now let's discuss demand and supply for foreign exchange. So within the foreign exchange market, people want to trade monies in trading in goods, services, and financial assets. A nation's export of goods, services, and financial typically causes foreign monies to be sold in order to buy that nation's money. Thus, U.S. exports of goods services, and financial assets create a supply of foreign currency and a demand for US dollars. Importing goods, services, and financial assets tends to cause the home currency to be sold in order to buy foreign currency. Thus, US imports of goods and services create a demand for foreign currency and a supply of US dollars. And where we are seeing that the US imports more than it exports, you can see the downward pressure on the US dollar because the supply of the US dollar is increasing. So we're going to talk about floating versus fixed exchange rates. Under a floating exchange rate system, the spot price of foreign currency is market determined. In other words, the market just decides. It's determined by the interaction of private demand and supply for that currency. So you end up with an equilibrium exchange rate. The market clears itself through the price mechanism. With a fixed exchange rate system, the government monetary authorities keep the exchange rate value fixed, or you'll often hear it pegged, even if the rate they choose differs from the current market equilibrium rate. So this is an artificial rate that is fixed by the government that is outside of the actual equilibrium rate. So the goal with the fixed exchange rate is to keep the exchange rate within a narrow band around the central or par value for the currency. So this figure 17.2 in your book, I believe, shows the spot exchange market. So remember, spot is the immediate price, not a future price, of that currency. And we're going to compare floating versus fixed exchange rates. So here in the section of the figure, that is section A, we're looking at the market for British pounds. And the exchange rate is the number of dollars per British pound. And you can see here the equilibrium exchange rate is $1.60 per pound. And that shows us where the equilibrium of supply versus demand is at point E. So we'll see about 300 billion British pounds exchange hands at this point, $1.60. However, what can happen if the government wishes to fix the exchange rate at a different level, then it has to intervene to buy or sell the currency to meet any difference between the private quantity demanded and the quantity supplied. So in panel A here, we're seeing that if the British government is committed not to let the pound fall below $1.98 per British pound, the government has to step in and purchase the difference. So when the price is at $1.98 per pound, the demand is only at $2.70. And so in order to make up the difference, the British government must buy 50 billion pounds, equal to that gap between A and B. In panel B, we're looking at the market for Swiss francs, and this is dollars per Swiss franc. So the equilibrium you can see at point E is $1.20, and the Swiss government in this case is committed not to let the franc rise above $1.01 per Swiss franc. So the government has to sell from point A to point B about 100 billion Swiss francs equal to that gap. So you can see that governments, in order to manipulate the exchange rate for their currency, will go out and have transactions that will affect the price for those currencies. Here we see a shift in demand for pounds in the spot exchange market. And you can see again, we're looking at dollars per pound. Equilibrium typically here at point E. So instead of a manipulation by the government per se, there can be an actual shift in the demand for British pounds. And this shift can come for different reasons, but we're showing here an increased demand for the British pound, and the supply curve is remaining unchanged. The exchange rate value in this instance is going to shift up to point E2, and the new equilibrium price will be $1.80 per British pound. So we deal with different things that will affect exchange rate, that will change them. First is depreciation. This is a fall in the market price, the exchange rate value of a currency. There can be appreciation, a rise in the market price of a currency. Discrete exchange rate changes in a nearly fixed rate system. So we'll talk a little bit about this. There can be devaluation. This is an official reduction in the otherwise fixed par value of a currency. So this is a discrete change in a fixed rate system. Also, there can be a revaluation. Again, these are steps taken by governments. A revaluation is the official increase in the otherwise fixed par value of the currency. We're going to finish up with a discussion about arbitrage within the spot exchange market. So what is arbitrage? Arbitrage is the process of buying and selling to make a nearly riskless profit. And this ensures that exchange rate values in different locations are essentially the same. So arbitrage is where you'll typically see some mispricing or mismatch between two different currencies that you'll see will give you an opportunity to buy and then sell and make a profit. Triangle arbitrage is arbitraging through three exchange rates. So it's going to involve three currencies, typically $2 exchange rate values and one cross rate value. So this ensures the $2 exchange rates and the cross rate are consistent amongst themselves. Arbitrage does not last long. When there's a mispricing in the market, arbitrageurs, they're the ones who take advantage and make the profit, hopefully. They will immediately start to trade. And as they trade, it drives the prices to be essentially the same. And so arbitrage is short-lived typically, but there are opportunities that happen. And it is a great way for many people who actively trade in this market to try and generate profits. With that, that's the end of our discussion about Chapter 17, Foreign Exchange Markets. For more in-depth discussion of foreign exchange, we cover that both in Finance 3260 as well as in Finance 3770. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email. Thank you very much.